Let's take a step outside of the office and learn how to light some different scenes with a small mobile lighting setup that can take the room from looking something like this to something like this. The inspiration behind this particular lighting kit is speed, mobility, and something that I can pick up and carry with me if I need to move from location to location. This kit won't be able to overpower the sun and bright environments, but for a location like this, it's really easy to set up and quickly get moving. Also, if you have larger lights, all of these lights can be used with your larger light kits as well. So this isn't just a setup where you can only use it in this configuration. I wanted this lighting kit to be small and run on batteries for shorter shoots like these videos, and they can also be plugged into wall power if I'm using long form content. And since I'm using this kit with speed in mind, I wanted to not use any modifiers like softboxes that would just complicate the setup and make more things to lug around with me. I just wanted to be able to set these lights up, press record, and go. This is where I stumbled down the tube light rabbit hole, and I discovered the Falcon Eyes IRISA lights. There are tons of tube lights out there, but surprisingly, there's only a small number of tube lights that can be controlled from a tablet or smartphone app. The higher end tube lights require an external router to get a wireless connection set up, and they cost almost 3 times more than these IRISA tube lights cost. So since speed was important for this, I wanted an affordable option that I can use with a phone or tablet app to control all of my lights from. This is great since I can control the brightness, color temperature, or any RGB values from this app without getting up from my seat. I love the fact that these lights can be controlled from the same app, but I'm not a huge fan of the interface of the app. The app itself works well and the lights connect really quickly after everything is all set up, but the interface is clunky, and that being said though, I'd rather have a functional app that looks like an engineer designed it than a beautiful app that just doesn't work. I love tube lights for their versatility, and since we're not using any modifiers here, the output of these tube lights is actually pretty hard. The hard light isn't really that flattering when you're using it for a key to film people. Soft light gives you a nice diffused light that doesn't create those harsh, rigid shadows. And it really does a great job at smoothing out textures as well. Hard light is the complete opposite. It has very distinct shadows, and you can see all the imperfections that people generally don't want to see on camera. I like using hard light for a fill light or a backlight, but when it comes to videos like this, I really like a nice soft light. What really attracted me to this setup was that Falcon Eyes has a soft LED light that can be used with the same app as the IRISA lights. This is the Falcon Eyes MC180C, and it is a battery or wall operated RGB light, so it fits really well with these tube lights. Going over our lighting setup, we have 3 lights, the IRISA 1, the IRISA 2, and the MC180C. I purchased the IRISA 1 myself for $149, and then I reached out to Falcon Eyes to see if they would send me the IRISA 2 and the MC180C to test out. If you're interested in knowing a little bit more behind my method and ethics of reviewing products, check out the link below. The IRISA 2 costs $299, while the MC180C costs $180. We're gonna need 3 light stands, and these light stands are pretty affordable. They aren't really anything heavy duty since this is made for speed and lightweight in mind. These nice cheap light stands do the trick just fine. Sometimes you can get away without even needing a light stand and just leaning these tube lights up against a wall or a countertop, and you wouldn't need a stand at all. But for here, we're just gonna use them. We also have a 5-in-1 reflector. If you do not want to purchase 3 lights like I have here, you can get away with using a reflector, or if you just want to direct or diffuse some of the light, a cheap 5-in-1 reflector really does come in handy. We won't be using that just yet in this setup, but I will go over a little bit more about this later. Digging into our lighting setup, there are a lot we can do with 3 lights. The most obvious setup that comes to mind is our traditional 3-point lighting setup, so let's dive into that and learn a few small modifications we can make to spice this shot up a little bit. For now, I'm going to leave these lights in frame, so you'll probably see some strange shadows. In reality, if I wasn't filming a video about lighting right now, I would scoot these out of the frame and make sure there's no weird reflections happening. I'm sure that there is some weird reflection happening on this countertop. So if this wasn't a video lighting video, I would make sure there were no reflections happening here. But just for the sake of example, I'm going to leave all of these in frame. The first step is to turn off our overhead lights and turn on any practicals we want in our scene. I'm in my kitchen, so I have lights above me and behind me, but I'm gonna keep these smaller sconce lights on because I don't think they're gonna overpower my lighting and they will add a little bit of depth to my shot. I also adjusted the curtains to fix how much light is spilling into my scene. This sounds a little backwards, but we want to expose our camera for the background before we turn any of our lights on. So if we turn all of our lights off, this is what that looks like, and you'll notice that I exposed for the background and I should just be looking like a silhouette. We have our practicals on so we can kind of get a vibe for the overall scene and then use our lights to fill in all that light that we shut off from the overhead lights. So the first light we're going to use is our key light, and that is the MC180C. I would ideally put this out of the frame, but if we want more shadows on our subject, we can pick this light up and move it farther. What am I on here? We can pick this light up and move it farther and we'll have more shadows on the opposite side of the key light. But if we want to eliminate some of those shadows, we can pick this up and not knock anything over and put it more in front of the subject so it will cast more light onto the other side of their face. This just really depends on the look you're going for. It can be pretty stylized if you have the key light too far off to the side, but if you want a little bit more even of lighting, try to bring it closer to the camera. We're putting our key light as close as we can to the frame so we can get the softest light we can on the subject. One downside of this light is that it is pretty small, but we're doing these medium shots, so if we were doing wide shots, we'd have to crank the intensity up. Right now, this is at 17%, so there's plenty of room if we need to crank this light up to fill more space and get more light onto our subject. We can do that, but for this little space and these talking heads, this light does a great job for that. One thing I would like to note here is that I'm prioritizing a lightweight kit, so we're not using a softbox, and our light is going to spill onto everything in front of it. Depending on what you want, this could be good or bad, depending on the look you're going for, but if you have a reflector, you can use it to actually shape some of the light. I don't mind the light spilling onto anywhere in the background, like the table or something like that, so right now I'm okay with that, but with that being said, let's dig into our next light, and that is our fill light. This will be the IRISA 2, and we will be using this on the opposite side of our key light. The fill light goes on the opposite side of the key light, so we can fill in all the shadows that the key creates. Make sure not to have your fill light to be too intense because we don't want to overpower our soft light. We only need this light bright enough to fill in the shadows so it's not completely dark on the other side of our subject. Overpowering the fill light will make the subject look really flat, and the IRISA 2 is nice because it's so large, it's capable of giving us a lot of light over a big area. We can dim the light down so all of that dim light is evenly distributed with a nice low level of light. One thing to watch out for when using tube lights though is the reflections they give off. If you put it right next to your subject, there can be some strange bars happening in the eyes or anything reflective. If this is happening to you, you can vertically adjust it up or down or adjust the angle to help eliminate those weird reflections if you're getting any of them. Also, if you're filming someone that's not a fan of hard light, you can diffuse or bounce this light by using a wall to bounce it back onto your subject, or shooting it through a reflector with some diffusion, or even just using white foam core to soften it up to make it softer for your talent, while also taking care of any of those weird reflections you might have. Our final light in this setup is going to be the smaller IRISA 1, and I saved the smaller light for a rim light because it's easier to hide than these larger lights. Either you can move it out of the frame or you can move it right behind the subject because it's so small, you can tuck this pretty much anywhere. It'll give you really nice separation from the background, and since we're using a hard light source, it'll help give some more shadows around the edge, so it'll actually look like they're popping off of the scene a little bit more and give you that depth you want. And this is our traditional 3-point lighting setup. This is a pretty reliable lighting setup, but there are some more things we can do to push this a little further and get a little more stylized of an appearance. If we want, we can completely remove our fill light and move it to another part of the scene if our subject is falling into the scene somewhere. I purposely left this side of the frame a little dark to illustrate that. We can start by taking this and shining it onto the background, and using the key and a backlight is one of my personal favorite lighting setups. It is a little more stylized and it does give you more shadows on the opposite side of your subject than the key, but it really depends on the shoot and what your shoot calls for. So after moving our fill light to the background and moving our backlight a little farther in line with our key light, we can use the Desal Light app to actually make our background light a little bit brighter, and just having the ability to use this app and control the color temperature and the brightness of our background light without getting up is really nice. It's something that if I didn't have and I haven't had before, I would have to make an adjustment, see how it looked, and then get up, make another adjustment, come back, see how it looks. So having one app that can do all of these things really makes my life a lot easier. And now that we moved our fill light behind us and we only have our backlight and key light, there's going to be more shadows on the side of my face. But if you don't like those shadows, we can use our reflector to put on the other side of the subject and really help them pop out from the scene and fill in some of these shadows on the other side of our subject. And if we get this a little closer, it'll fill in even more. And if we take it farther away, it'll be a little darker. So this all depends on what you want to do with your shot. This is a silver bounce. On the other side of our silver reflector, we have the black side, and this is the negative fill, and it will take care of all the light that is spilling onto the shadow side. And if you position this correctly, it will completely black out the side of your subject, which could be another look that you're going for. But again, this is a really stylized shot. So these 5-in-1 reflectors are really cheap and they're just really something nice to have. There's also a diffusion if you remove all of the silver outside. There's a white and a gold reflector on the inside too. So just having those abilities to bounce light or just diffuse the light if you have to with a 5-in-1 reflector will get you really far, especially with a nimble and small lighting kit like we have here. And since our lights are RGB, we can control everything from this Desal Light app, and we can change the look of our entire scene by going through and individually picking what all of our values are going to be. So we can get a teal and orange look. I generally like to keep my fill light white, but it is nice that you can control all of these RGB values from one place of your fill, key, background lights, and any additional Falcon Eyes lights you have. You may have additional lights for your practicals even that you can control the brightness and color temperature and RGB values. So I love this setup and I love the flexibility it gives you. I love this for its speed, weight, and ease of use, but there are a few quick thoughts I have on this setup after using it for a while. I wish the MC180C was a little bit larger, but I'm not aware of any larger RGB version of this light. It's tough to say if I would really need a larger light since this is right here at 17% and it's pretty much out of the frame and it's still able to do a pretty good job. Since this light is so small, it can be limiting, but I'm making this whole setup with these medium talking head shots and very quick product photography in mind. So for this, it works great for me. There are also bicolor soft LED lights, but they don't work with the Desal Light app. Another great addition would be to have a larger light that could be used with this app. I think in the future, since this is the only RGB soft LED light they have, they may be working on another one, and I really hope they do. I would love to actually purchase a larger version of this light to use even in my studio to replace some of my other lights if I don't need to have a softbox and a grid to direct light. This light is really easy to set up and just get going quickly. So I like working with it when I just have some inspiration that I want to make a video. these are the lights that I find myself going to. A great addition to this setup are magic arms. Having two magic arms to hold these tube lights up at an angle somewhere, instead of having them just be vertically mounted on these light stands, would be a huge benefit. These lights are flat, so you could just use them on a table if you don't want to use them on a light stand, but if you really want to have them in a secure spot, putting a magic arm on the ends could really have some benefits. Man, that's bright. So putting these lights in some weird places if you can't even fit a light stand where you're filming. The light stands are working for me for now, but if I need to put them in a small space, I'm definitely going to invest in some more magic arms and put them anywhere that I can't fit a big light stand. I love the fact that the IRISA 2 has a removable battery, so if I ever need to replace the battery, I can just unscrew the cap and swap out the batteries quickly. The IRISA 1 does not have a removable battery, and it has an internal battery. The IRISA 1 charges with a USB-C port, and the IRISA 2 comes with a wall charger, and to charge the battery, you actually have to remove it and plug it onto the battery charger. It does come with the wall outlet, so you can use the IRISA 2 forever plugged into the wall, but I do like the concept of the removable battery, but it's just unfortunate that I have to remove the battery to charge it. And it doesn't use the USB-C that the IRISA 1 uses. I hope in the next version, Falcon Eyes keeps it consistent and uses USB-C for everything, and I could keep the battery in the unit while it's charging. After using this setup, I have loved the ease of use to just pick everything up and move to a new location to film. I still have my studio set up that I can sit down and quickly make videos, but sometimes just having access to a small kit that I can take out anywhere with me and film in any location when the inspiration strikes is really nice to have. I can also use these lights in addition with my other bigger lights if I need to. So what do you guys think of this setup? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe and check out some of my other videos. If you didn't enjoy this video, share it with someone you don't like. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next videos.